hold the air. Hold the air. I see the subject inside. Looks like he's got a gun in his hand and he's pointing at the clerk. Guys, I've got the south covered behind you. Watch the crossfire. Running southbound, Rob. He's coming right at you.
All units, Victor 3, Victor 5 are fighting with 1. Hold the air.
Victor 3, slow down. Subject in custody. Firearm recovered.
Copy that. Command clear. Subject is in custody for the robbery. Firearms recovered.
Hey, welcome back to Hold the Air Podcast. I'm Rob Forbes. Seat is my left, as always, the one and only John Cosme. Cos, welcome to the studio, brother.
What's going on, brother?
So, man, I love the series of dedicated to women in law enforcement we're doing, and today we are stacking the deck, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
We are stacking the deck. So it's kind of it really feels right, you know, as a current employee with Lansing Police. She's super influential with the department. I'm so excited that she's in the studio with us. Bring us up to speed, bro. Who we got?
All right, so the one and only Kasha Osborn has graced us with her presence in the Hold the Air Podcast, and I say that kind of jokingly, but I love you. You know that I love you. You're like a sister to me. You have and will continue to be such an important part of what gets done in the business of law enforcement at our alma mater, right?
Yeah, man.
Rob and I are very proud to have worked for the Lansing Police Department for as long as we did. But what makes it a great experience is the people you work with. You're literally with these people half of your life, so like they're your second family. And Kasha, you were instantly likable, and then forever a friend. So tell the viewing audience who you are, where you came from, a little back history, all that good stuff.
Well, first, I want to say thank you guys for having me on here. You guys are like my brothers, so I'm humbled. I really do appreciate the fact that you guys would even think to have me on your show. I'm Kasha Osborn. I'm a detective with the Lansing Police Department. I was born in Tacoma, Washington. Lived there for a few years with my siblings and my mom. And then my father took custody of me and my siblings, and we moved to Inglewood, California. And then lived there for probably about 5 years before we ended up moving to Michigan, and where we kind of, rooted our family. Port Huron is where I went to school through high school, and then eventually when I decided to go to college, I ended up moving to Lansing. That's how I ended up here. But technically, I've lived in Lansing longer than any other place around. So
Nice. So all the way from Tacoma.
Yeah.
Yep. So I can say this. I've had the privilege of getting to know your dad. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a face-to-face type of thing. I actually called him for some advice.
Yeah.
At your kind of like guidance.
Yeah.
Back when I wrote that article to the City Pulse when I had no permission to do it. But he was, I'm telling you, Pops was transcending through the phone. Like this guy, calm, very deliberate, honest, fair. I actually sent him a outline, like a raw draft, and he called me back in like, I don't know, an hour. He's like, okay, we're gonna have to adjust some things.
let me tell you about the English language and where a comma goes.
Well, I think I was okay with the commas and the periods, but he wanted the content to flow, and later in this podcast, you'll understand why. Very articulate, very genuine, but very purposeful, right? And all those things describe you. So clearly, Pops is kind of leaning. You lean in your dad's characteristics. So tell us. So you moved to Lansing from Port Huron. What was that moment in your life where you're like, okay, I wanna get into law enforcement?
Yeah. So there are no law enforcement officers at least in my dad's family. My biological mother, I think I have a cousin that was an officer, but not in the realm of what I grew up in, right? So when I moved to Lansing, to get away from my parents because my parents were so strict, to be honest. All right. My parents were very, very strict. Both my sisters went to MSU. I was planning on going to MSU, and then my parents didn't feel like I was ready to, academically, I was not focused enough for them to send me to the big school is what they called it. So I got mad and I was like, I'm moving out. So at 17, I graduated from high school. I was 17 years old. I called my big sister and I'm like, hey, find me a spot in Lansing, someplace close to this Lansing Community College place.
Yeah.
So I could walk to school. And so she found us a house. We lived over at Pine and Madison within walking distance of LCC. And I started there and then I needed a job. So I started working at LCC Police and Public Safety. And that's where I met Steve Blake. And Steve Blake was the one.
I love Steve Blake.
He's wonderful.
I love Steve
He's
Blake.
Wonderful. Shout out to Steve.
Yeah, for sure.
He was the one that kind of, I wasn't really sure what I knew I've always, since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to be a pediatrician. Like I always thought that I was going to be working with kids. That was my heart. So when he told me about LPD, the cadet program, I was kind of unsure. I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. Like I'm focused on going to medical school and becoming a doctor. And he was like, well, you can at least start out there. They had a program at the time with their the cadet program would pay for cadets to go to school. They would pay for like their books and stuff like that. So I was on my own and I was trying to make ends meet and I needed something extra. So that's why I ended up applying for the cadet program and ended up getting hired. And then it was there I met Mackenzie was the one that was kind of like.
Okay, we cannot brush over Russ McKenzie.
No.
Russ McKenzie is a law enforcement legend.
Yeah.
He is as smooth a conversation you will ever have.
Yes.
I love that guy, and he always means well. Like I have never had a conversation with his nickname's Coyote, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I've never had a conversation with Coyote that didn't mean something. Yeah. Even if it was in like a joke or something.
Yeah.
So you were mentored by some for real dudes.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And he was wonderful because I had my mindset on like, hey, do I have to stay here forever? Like, can I just work here for a couple of years and then bounce? And he's like, yeah, you can do that, but you're gonna be here long term. Like he knew. He was like, you're gonna be here long term. So he got me in and I started working as a cadet. That's where I got an idea of what it was that police work was all about because I had no clue. And talking to the officers and it just seemed like, I think the people are what drove me, like what kind of like kept me there. Yeah. Right. Like I've met a ton of amazing human beings throughout the course of my career that I'll forever be grateful for. But they taught me about, I mean, I was young. I was 19 when I came to LPD. I was a baby. So, and granted all the stuff that I experienced in my childhood, all the traumatic stuff, it didn't prepare me necessarily for the world. I kind of prepared for the world here in my experiences and my exposure at LPD. But no, riding along with the various officers and getting to just see the ins and outs of police work is what kept me here. And then I got hooked. I didn't want to leave. They offered me the spot. They were sponsoring police officers back then. So they sponsored me through the academy, and going back home and telling my family was a whole. Okay. We had like family meetings back then where everybody like something major happened. Everybody got on the phone. My parents got on the phone and they called all the siblings and we all got back home and we all sat around the table and they were like, your sister's got some news.
Yeah.
And so I had to tell everybody that I was going to the police academy and everybody pretty much chimed in on how they felt about it, and they weren't supportive at that point.
Like 0 to 0, no one wanted to
nobody wanted me to be a police officer. And my dad was very adamant. He's like, I didn't raise you to be a police officer. You don't know nothing about the streets. You're not prepared to deal with criminals. And it was mainly the fact that I'm his baby girl, right?
Yeah,
so I'm the baby girl of the family. And he didn't want anything to happen to me. Right. it wasn't his son, but he did take part in raising my brother. But my brother was his death was ruled a suicide, but my whole family thinks he was murdered. But back in the day, so I think that kind of weighed heavily on his thought process.
So I mean, are you comfortable talking about that?
Yeah.
So what happened to your brother?
So I kind of got to go backwards. I'm sorry. Living in Tacoma, I stayed with my biological mother. My biological mother and my dad divorced when I was about 2 years old. My dad moved to California. He was in the military, so he ended up living in California. Me and my siblings, me and my sisters, my 2 older sisters, and my older brother, who's 10 years older than me, lived in Tacoma. My biological mother got hooked on drugs, and so my brother was our caretaker. He took care of us, and our house was the flop house. So he ran the streets. He was dealing in the streets, trying to make ends meet to take care of me and my siblings. And then he ended up leaving because of an interaction between him and my mom that he just couldn't handle. So he ended up going to Cali, where my mom's family is also from. And then it was just me and my 2 sisters. So at that point, I think I was 5. And I had a 7-year-old sister, and then the oldest was 9.
Oh, wow.
And so a deaf family took her, and my older sister's deaf. My biological mother's also deaf, but a family took my sister in, and then it was just me and my 7-year-old sister that were left in the house by ourselves for a period of time. And my oldest sister just couldn't take it, and she called my dad and told him everything that was going on, because we covered for my mom. We didn't want her to get in trouble or anything like that, so we had her back. So we told him everything that was going on. He eventually flew to Tacoma and took custody of us, and we ended up going back to Cali with him. But he's not the biological father of my brother. So my brother stayed one of the actual, the deal was, if my mother said that she'll give us up custody if my dad would pay for her ticket to fly to Cali to be with her family. So she ended up coming to Cali as well. And we would visit from time to time, but my brother stayed with her. Eventually, they made amends, and he stayed with her. And then a lot of things happened. My dad got shot. We think that was a robbery. And then my stepmom's sister died in a car accident. So
oh my goodness,
that's how we ended up in Michigan. So my dad and my stepmom were together in Cali, and then her sister passed away, so we moved to Michigan, and it was just me and my sisters at the time, and then my little brother that was between my stepmom and my dad, and then Jalan is my older brother. He stayed back with my mom, and so he ran streets. You know, he was affiliated with gangs and stuff like that in LA, and there's lots of rumors, but essentially his boys, he was about to leave town with his girl. I might have a niece somewhere out there that's I've never met, but he was supposed to leave town with his girlfriend, and his boys threw him a party. And when they came back, they left for a short period of time. When they came back, he was dead. And my family was adamant that he wouldn't have done anything like that. There wasn't really a thorough investigation at that point in time. So they were pretty hell bent on the fact that it was a murder.
Right.
You know, so that was the first funeral I ever went to. I was 10 years old. Came back to Cali to go to his funeral. My mom just wasn't in the right frame of mind at that point in time. So like, you know, when he was in the casket, it's the first time I ever seen a dead body in a casket.
Oh, man.
She had me touch his gunshot wound that was, you know, on his head. And to this day, I still can't see bodies in caskets at all because of that personal experience that I had with them. But my dad helped raise them. You know, he wasn't his father, but he definitely helped raise them and played a part. And I think in my mind, because I chose that profession, I think he was scared of something happening to me and having to go through that. Yeah. You know, with me.
Right.
If we're circling back around, but
yeah, because at 17, right, your reality is way different than Dad's.
Oh yeah.
And
completely.
Then you guys travel all the way from Tacoma, you get to Port Huron with all that stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
All those adjustments and all that stress and anxiety. And you're at the age of what when you moved to Portland?
When I moved to Port Huron, I was 10.
Yeah.
And so I didn't realize I don't know if I necessarily realized the magnitude of what I had experienced at that time. That was just a normal. It was like, all right, whatever. Like there was a lot of chaos in our lives back then. So I didn't. I mean, I knew that my brother was gone, right? And my big brother was like awesome, right? Like he was a playful one. He I don't know. He swung me around by my feet all the time. So I have limited memories because I was so young of him. But Oreo cookies was his thing. He used to take Oreo. It was like the nastiest thing. He would take Oreo cookies and he would drop it in milk until it got soggy, and he would just eat it.
Oh yeah,
with a spoon.
With a spoon.
There's no other way to eat an Oreo
Just
in my
nasty.
house.
I think they call it Oreo.
No, but
gumbo.
it was like mushy.
That's how you do it.
He would just let it soak in the milk. It was disgusting.
This is amazing. This total sidebar here. As long as we're going down memory lane, so my kids are gonna crack up at this, right? My son was about maybe 3 or 4 years old, somewhere in there, right?
Yeah.
And my wife, getting groceries or whatever, got some Oreos, and here he is. We had a high stools at the kitchen counter or whatever, like a nook or whatever. And my wife gives our son a couple of Oreos, and he says, without me prompting him, he says, "Can I have some milk?" So my wife puts some milk in the glass, or whatever, gives him the milk, and he literally takes the Oreos, bloop, bloop. and my wife, she knows I eat them like that, and she looks at me like, "What? Did you show him that?" I'm like, "That was off script."
Yes.
That is
Like, there was
nasty.
he crushed them up, let them soak, eat them with a spoon. That's how we do it. That's how you do
so
it. That's the
nasty.
only way to
That's
eat
like
Oreo.
That's one of
proper Oreo
my
etiquette.
most vivid memories is how he used to eat freaking Oreo cookies. And I love a good Oreo.
Oh,
but
yeah,
not-
man.
Yeah, bro had it right.
That's
Oh, yeah.
nasty.
Yep.
'Cause
That's nasty.
I think if I can relate, and in any way, the first time I dropped my Oreo cookie in the milk, you know what I mean? Like you handle it,
Yeah,
and
you fish it out. Just
you're
like,
You
like,
try
oh,
to find
crap.
it and it's staying in there
And
too long.
you're like this, and then you pull it out. You're like, oh, that's the best way to eat that damn thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so he's swinging you by your ankles.
Yes. Yeah.
he's
So
eating Oreo
he was
cookies.
he was a protector, right?
Yeah.
He did everything in his power to keep us safe. And I mean, to this day, I have no idea. Like we were with solo from 2 to 5, like for 3 years, and nobody came in. There was no CPS. There was no nothing. He was my hero.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Just an amazing human. So
So how was your 10-year-old Port Huron, and then 7 years in Port Huron? Mm-hmm. And we end up at Pine and Madison,
yep.
and mom and dad aren't happy. What did dad tell you?
He just said he flat out was like, you can't do it. And I'm like, well, I moved out, so you really can't tell me what to do. And that was big for me because I was a rule follower. I respected my parents. I didn't really go against the grain at all. I was my sister used to make fun of me because I was super, super sensitive. Like my dad looked at me sideways, I would start crying. You know, if my sister said anything mean to me, I would start crying. If I got mad, if I got angry, and to this day, I'm still the same way. Controlled.
Yeah.
But if I get mad, I can't control. I can't do what I want to do. Like when I get super frustrated, so I just cry. So they're like, "What are you gonna do when you tell a bad guy to go to jail and they say no? Are you gonna sit there and cry?" Like it was just they really.
You ain't gotta say nothing, Kasha, because we coming.
Yeah. Well, they didn't. I mean, I didn't know that I had that triggered inside of me either until I got into this profession. But like my upbringing. There was no indication that I would be good at doing something like this. So they were just scared. They were fearful. And my family is like a gung ho. They got your back. They're going to uplift you. They're going to motivate you. They're going to encourage you. So I think it was even hard for them to tell me no, but they were just, they were not confident at that point in my abilities. So they were scared. They didn't want me to do it.
Sure. Yeah. So knowing you as long as I've known you, right? Prior to this podcast effort, I know that your dad wrote an article one time.
Yeah.
In a paper, and we'll post it on our Facebook.
Yeah.
It's a must read.
It is phenomenal.
It's a thing where like you're reading this man's interpretation of something that is absolutely wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he finds the right side of the conversation.
Yeah.
We're gonna post it on our Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's a short article, but it is powerful.
Yeah.
And it kind of, it stamps what you're saying about your dad and where you came from.
Yeah.
And to me, no surprise as to who you are and what you are and what your legacy is going to be for the police department.
Yeah. That article was important to me because I didn't even realize, he never told me he wrote it. That article came to me from a neighbor. And she was like, I thought you'd want to see what your dad wrote about you. And it was interesting to me because my dad doesn't talk too much about his past at all. And it was an experience that he had, the first experience he ever had with law enforcement. Never talked to me about it. And then this is after I completed the police academies. I mean, I knew that there was something, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So he had 2 white officers pull out their guns and point them at him and his friends when he was at a candy store, at a convenience store buying
as
something.
a young kid.
As a young kid. I think he
Yeah.
was like 14 years old,
Yeah.
right? And they called him racial slurs, obviously. And at that point in time was way back in the, I mean, I don't, sorry, Dad, not way back. It was, it was, probably back in the 70s when he experienced this. And so for me, reading that article was it was an eye opener for me to know that my dad had experienced such a traumatic incident. It pissed me off. It made me angry, right? Because that's not why I got into this profession, to treat people the way that he was treated. And it made me want to be better, frankly. And that's what he said. That's what he eventually we had a conversation about that article. And he was like, I want you to be better than those officers. I don't want you to ever make anybody feel that way. And that sat with me throughout the course of my career. And we still, to this day, we don't talk about my job. My dad does not know. He knows basically what I do, but I've never told him any of the stories of any of the things that I've experienced in my career at his request. After September 11th, when he saw the officers running in to save, all those people, that's what made him stop and kind of reassess how he felt about law enforcement. It wasn't necessarily, I was just getting started, so I didn't really have that, that exposure at that point.
All right, so now it's time for you to go in the police academy.
Yeah.
What academy did you go to?
70th.
Oh, Mid-Michigan.
Yeah, Mid-Michigan. Yeah, I was in the 70th at Mid-Michigan, LCC.
Okay.
I was one of the youngest with Aaron Terrell. He and I were 20 years old at the time that we went through the police academy, so that was a big deal at that point in time. And then
shout out to Aaron. I love that guy.
Yep. And I think 2002 is when we got sworn in and became law enforcement officers and started the FTO process.
The old FTO, Rob. Why don't
the old FTO process, not the current.
Why don't you
old
navigate
FTO
us
process.
down the FTO process? Because you were FTO for how long?
Man, I don't know. Maybe 10 years, maybe a little longer, something like that. I learned this, had nothing to do with police work, but I was able to spend some time with a wildly successful person that I really, really respect. His name is Mark Militello. You guys haven't met him before. He's a friend of mine, and he was talking about a situation with his life that I took and I applied it to myself as a trainer. And this is what Mark Militello said. He said, you be careful what you're duplicating, because who you're duplicating yourself to, they're going to do 50% of what you do right, and they're going to do 100% of what you do wrong. Right?
Yeah.
And for me, I got a lot of bad habits. Right? So it really... It was really important to me, and it struck me in that moment, way back when, but it struck me, and it really helped. It helped my mindset when I would have a new person that, it was. I would say the people that were my recruits. I think that if we took a random pull from them, I think that it would be pretty consistent of what they would say, right? In that when you get in the car with Rob Forbes, you better come correct and you better be ready to work, because that is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to work. If it's 10 hours shift, plan on working 10 hours, and we're going to put everything we have into this time that we have together. And that would be true. That is exactly what I try to duplicate. And I think that as a trainer, there is nothing more rewarding. It's what keeps you coming back, man. When you have a recruit and they get, they have a ton of work to do, but they put the work in, man. And then they come out of the training program and they're doing their thing on their own, and they get maybe a couple years under their belt or whatever, and they get in a rhythm, and then they come out here and they're doing this job the right way, and they're getting after it, and they're getting results, and they're getting traction. And, look, they put a lot of work in and they earned that, but to know that you had some kind of small influence in guiding them to get traction, man, I tell you what, it feels so good.
Yeah.
Well, you says you say small traction, but like I am rooted in my FTOs. Like every single one of the FTOs that I had helped mold me into the officer that I am today. So it's not a small feat. It is a major. It's a major role in the process of my of any officer's career, right? Depending on the type of FTO that you had. I had Nardoni, I had Mobley, I had Joel Myers, I had Lewandowski, and I'm not laughing because Joel was just hilarious because he'd be like, "All right, I'm gonna let you take control of this call," and then he would take control.
Oh,
and I'm like,
man.
he could not relinquish control at all.
You can't. Like it is impossible for me to watch a call and not take action, especially as people, because we're wearing the same uniform or whatever, and people come up to me and engage me. It's so natural just to engage them back. It's so hard to say, "Don't talk to me. Talk to my recruit over here." It's hard to do, man. I couldn't do it.
Because we're in the business of winning, and that list of people you filled up. So at what phase? So
Nardoni was one.
Phase one.
Phase one.
Phil Nardoni, phase one.
And you know what I learned the most from him is to have fun. Honestly, that man played way too much, and everybody messes with me now.
Yeah,
everybody messes with me now because I'm always messing with people, and that's honestly where I got. He was a great officer, but that honestly is probably one of the biggest things that I took from him. He's a jokester. He used to play all the time, and he just had have fun with his job because think about it, like it's 25 years of grueling work. It really is. It's stressful work. But at the same time, you have to learn how to balance it to have fun so that you can get through that 25 years, right? And be happy and with the work that you did. So that's what he gave
phase
me.
One.
Phil phase one.
Phase two.
Mobley.
Oh, Frank Mobley.
Mobley, I called my mom. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna make it. I don't think I'm gonna make it through this program. He was so hardcore. He was so hardcore. He taught me how to survive out in the streets, and I will be forever grateful for him. His way of policing is he is the poster boy of what you should be doing, right? Out here in the streets, and how to take care of yourself, and how to stay safe, and how to do a good job. Phase 3 was Joel, and Joel just taught me control. Like,
yes, he did.
And that I didn't have an issue once I completed FTO. If I popped up at a call and I saw that it wasn't going in the direction that it needed to go, I would be okay with taking control of that call.
Yeah.
And I learned that from him because sometimes he's like, not everybody has it. Not everybody can resolve a situation as quickly as you need it to be resolved because they're not the right person for it. So you come in, you assess, and if it's your time to step in, then don't be afraid to step in. So that's what he taught me.
Wildly compassionate dude.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But had that go button, man.
Yeah.
Oh, he did too.
If it was going sideways.
0 to 100.
So
he would be jumping
you're phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and now you get kicked in the shadow. You got Mark Lewandowski.
I got Mark Lewandowski.
Mr. Smooth.
Mark, he's so
Mr. Smooth.
He was so smooth. And you know what he taught me? He taught me the importance of detail in your reports. I almost failed FTO because of an accident, the UD-10s.
Yeah.
Stupid UD-10s.
UD-10 was the
right?
accident report.
The accident reports, right? And using your resources, like, when you're in the FTO program, you don't want to ask, you don't want to sound stupid, so you don't want to ask questions. But he taught me that that's the only way that you're going to learn is if you stop and you pull somebody aside, you got a ton of resources that are available to you throughout that entire program. All right, you'd be stupid to not use it. So that's what he taught me, and just important detail in your reports. Like he was a stickler for the reports, and then I was just like you. I ended up becoming an FTO. And I took all the values that I learned from all of my FTOs and I implemented them with my training other officers. And I will say that being an FTO is probably one of the most stressful times that I've ever had in my career here. And it's mainly because you're thinking about, you're responsible for your own life, right? Okay, when you're out here in the streets. But now you pull a cub and you're responsible for theirs too, right? And you're responsible for teaching them how to survive out here in the streets. That is a huge stressor for any person to have to deal with. And as rewarding as it was just, there were days where I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. You know, like I mean, it was terrifying, but at the same time, I knew that I was trained by the best. So it was like, all right, this is what you get. You either make it, and I was a hard FTO. I was not easy. I was very, very particular with certain things. I was very particular with officer safety. I was very particular with report writing because I understood the importance of both of those things.
What a cadre of guys. Because you talk about Mark's attention to detail. I mean, we all know in this room what kind of detective that guy was.
Oh,
Yeah, phenomenal.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Yep.
And heartfelt and purpose-driven. Phil, as much as a jokester he was, Phil could get down.
Yeah.
He knew the smell of the street, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Hard-working dude. Joe Myers, love that guy. He's like a brother to me. Frank, of course, right? So, wow. So you navigate your way all the way through that. You become an FTO. What other highlights in your career have you had? Because I think there might have been one in 2016.
There was one in 2016.
Matter of fact, there might be a few of us that got those in the studio today.
So what happened in 2016, Kasha?
I was Officer of the Year. At that point, so you asked, so in my journey, I was FTO, and then I became a negotiator after that. Shout out to Southwick for that. He was the one that encouraged me to test for negotiator. And then I worked the road for probably about 12 years until I had my kids, and then I came off the road and worked CSU. I think in 2015, I took my first special assignment.
What is CSU?
So that the Community Services Unit, which was obviously our agency has known the importance of community services, building bonds, building relationships with members of our community and the police department. So for me, that was huge. And we can go back to the article that my dad wrote, right?
Yep, exactly.
And the importance of mending the relationships that have been forever broken between law enforcement and members of the Black and Brown community. So, so I was eager. I was motivated. I felt like we should be out there more. We should be visible. We should be interacting more. We should be engaged more. We should be doing different types of activities. So, I think that's where that 2016 Officer of the Year award came from, because I was very dedicated in making sure that our agency was a good representation of the city that and we were out there and we were doing things.
It's a hell of a feeling when you get recognized by the place that you serve, that you work for, and you know that you're out there doing it. But and none of us in this room do it for that, right?
No.
But when that phone call comes and you're talking to the chief and they've recognized you for that, I tell you what, I mean, it's a hell of a feeling. Like it stunts you, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, I'm doing this shit the right way.
Yeah.
I'm doing this thing the way I'm supposed to be doing it. We don't pitch a perfect game. Rob and I talk about it all the time. It's impossible to pitch a perfect game, but it's not impossible to try.
Yeah.
It's not impossible to go out there and try to put your best foot forward. You actually were the person that brought me into negotiating, which was probably one of the most valuable things I've ever experienced in law enforcement. People's lives are on the line.
Yeah.
And you've got to go there and you've got to attach these skills that you've been trained and in live action. So explain what you got out of that and what drew you to that. I know you said Southworth and
Yeah, Southworth was the one that got me into it. I understood the importance of communication just early on, just because of my background with, dealing with deaf family members. My biological mother being deaf, my sister being deaf, my father. I'm what's considered a coda, child of deaf adults. My father had both of his parents were deaf, so. The art of communication has just been kind of embedded in me from birth, really. But Southworth was the one. I guess I knew the importance of like body language, facial expression, all that kind of stuff, because that's huge in ASL, right? In American Sign Language. But I didn't understand the detailed to like slowing things down, ALS, active listening. Asking open-ended questions, all that stuff I was not familiar with until I became a negotiator, until I went through the courses and stuff like that. So with Southworth was just one of those people. I think he saw in me. It's the same thing that we're pretty much the same people. Or the same person as far as when it comes to just loving people and loving to talk to people and to engage. So it's the same thing when I recruited you to try out. He saw a gift in me that I was not aware that I had, and it's just and Southwood was that bridge between us and the tactical team, because initially we were not respected as negotiators, right? They didn't necessarily understand our value until he educated them on our process and what's important in negotiations and how it saves lives, not just civilians, but also officers, so that they don't have to rush in too quickly to try and de-escalate a situation and potentially get harmed. So the hut boys, as we call them, would get frustrated with us because we would take the time to sit down and we would try and come up with a plan. And then when we made contact, it was a whole matter of breaking down, okay, what is it that this person needs from us at this point in time? And that requires time and that requires patience. And they were not were not patient at that time. They didn't understand the importance of patience.
Yeah, and every scenario is different, right?
Yeah.
So when you're in a situation when you're working a patrol car and you've got an armed suspect coming at you, there's no time for negotiation, right?
No.
It's all tactical at that point.
Yes.
And our hut guys, right? Our start guys, our tactical guys do a phenomenal job. And they go out there, they're super well trained, they're super controlled, but the art of de-escalation, right, has just as much value.
Yeah.
When you talk to me, I could see the passion that you had for that team, and I'm like, I gotta get on this team.
Yeah. Initially, I thought it was about talking, and it's not about talking. It's really about the ability to listen to people and to connect, to pull from that conversation the things that that make that person tick, right? And we talk about triggers and stuff like that throughout negotiating, and learning to avoid, and then learning to when it's time to just go in. So it's an art, and it's something that was my bread and butter. I loved. It was hard for me to give up the team when I was handed the torch, so to speak. So it's an important position in our department that we have to have. And there are a ton of people. I mean, the crew that we have now is just absolutely amazing, and they all have different strengths.
Hungry,
right? They all have different strengths, and they're motivated, and they care, and that's like that is the biggest thing. Like, we care about what happens in these high-risk situations, right? We care about the people that are involved. We care about the person that we're talking to on the phone, the accused. We care about getting them out safe. We care about our team. It's
nothing to do with ego.
No, it has nothing to do with ego. It has everything to do with the passion for human life and preserving it. As much as I loved it, right? It requires a lot of time to transition that next person into that role. And I wanted to make sure that person had enough time and experience before, I left. That person was Mandy. Mandy ended up taking over the team. And then for Mandy handed the torch over to Hannah. But Yeah, it was hard to do, but it was obviously necessary. I think that's one of the things that LPD struggles with as far as like, those transitions and making sure people are have enough time.
But I think that's pretty common in the police process. I do, and I think it's improving. I do.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I think we're
I agree with you
conscious
100%.
enough to improve it. So you leave there and you go on a DB.
Yep.
And probably one of the quietest years in law enforcement, 2020, was it? Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about chaos. Talk about chaos. That was, man, that was challenging. I was excited because that was my third time trying out to testing for DB, and I finally made it, and I got promoted it was my son's birthday, May 19th.
Which son?
Knox, the baby.
Knox.
Yeah. In 2020, and middle of COVID, George Floyd happened the next week. And I was assigned, when you first come in, you are assigned to general crimes. And for some reason, I was tasked after George Floyd with dealing with all of the riots, and investigating all of those crimes. So I went from I think a case of zero, my caseload went from 0 to 60 within a couple of weeks, and talk about transitioning from the road to DB, totally different. Yeah. And I was so far removed from the road because I had been in the CSU for almost 6 years that, it was even a greater struggle because, DB is it's a total different type of work, right? That you're doing. So there was a lot of pressure during that time, coming in and starting off really quickly. But people carried me through. They helped me. The other detectives definitely.
Well, the detective bureaus across the country got kicked in the teeth, right? Because cooperation from people was at an all-time low because resentment was politicized. Mm-hmm. Let's just resent the police. Yeah. Let's look at this video 1,000 times. Yeah. And just find any reason to go downtown and smash somebody's hard-earned business window, and grab their stuff, and then there's no prosecution because everyone's freaking out on how to handle the situation. Well, we're learning now, right? It's 2025. We're learning now, right, that nothing should have changed, right? Yeah. But that's how powerful politics are. Yeah. Yep. So you get into DB. How long have you been in DB?
For 5 years now, almost 5 years.
5 years.
It'll be 5 years in May.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How you liking that?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's like I said, it's just a different type of work. It's more in depth. I remember I caught my first homicide. I want to say it was 6 months, maybe 6 months after I had gotten promoted, and then my second 7 months, and then my third 8 months after that. So I was in it, and it's a sink or swim type of situation. Initially, because you don't really know what the heck you're doing, right? But then you have all the more senior detectives that are coming in, and they're trying to guide you, but they have their caseload as well. And that was, if you remember 2020, 2021, that was those were our worst years. And so trying to lean on the senior detectives was difficult, right? So you try to find that balance in the work, but it solidified what I wanted to do. It solidified my place there. It made me I've always valued our work. I have a passion for what we do, and I have a passion for helping people. And as cheesy, it's always cheesy to say that. I just want to help people, but we get an opportunity to help people at a completely total different level. And it's not just the victim; it's the family members that are affected as well. And so, working those violent crimes, it's just a different type of. It's a different type of motivation, and it's a different type of, appreciation for life. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It takes you right down to the bare grassroots of everything.
Yeah, it's almost indescribable. I can't shut it off. I can tell you that much. And it's hard because, I have a life, I have kids, I have to run them to and from. And you have to learn how to temporarily put a pause on things, right? So that you can deal with your your everyday life. But I will say that I'm just like you guys were. Like I'm obsessed with the work, and I love it. And it could be, you can look at it as something negative, but I look at it as something positive.
Yeah. You're in a career that you've obviously fell in love with, and you're striving through your career, and you're having wonderful experiences. On top of all that, you give birth to the two beautiful young men.
Yes.
And I know your kids.
Yeah.
I love Xavier. I love Knox. They're freaking dynamite kids.
Yeah.
Where you talk about the passion for the job, and I know that you have as much passion for your kids. It's equal, probably more. We describe as a woman what that is.
My children are my world. They're my everything. So I will say that when I had Xavier, that was back in 2012. So I had 10 years on when I had him. And that was the first time that I questioned whether or not I wanted to continue in law enforcement. And I just remember, and I worked, like, I worked all the way up until just before I delivered him.
Crazy.
So crazy.
And I mean,
I stubbed my toe the other day and I was down for 2 hours.
Man, I get the man flu. It's over, Jack. You know what I mean?
I worked all the way up. And at the time I was married to another officer. So we had to split our time. And so I did take a majority of the time off with X. And I just remember having him and just being mesmerized by the fact that I was a part in creating this human life. I brought him into this world. Yeah. And my struggle after being connected, after nursing him, and after being with him every single day and forming my bond with him, I questioned how it could be fair for him, for me to go into this dangerous profession every single day and to risk my life for complete and total strangers. And for a while I was back and forth. I didn't know if I wanted to come back. I didn't know if I wanted to, but I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. Like I have been directed down this path so many times. There were certain doors that closed. There were certain doors that opened. The good Lord, has directed me on this journey, and I don't think there was any way for me to navigate around that. Yeah. So when I came back to work, as difficult as it was, I mean, I remember because I was nursing. So I was trying to pump in between calls and stuff like that.
Good
Going
Lord.
call to call. It was the worst. Like when you think about, I mean,
It's a real thing, Kasha.
It really.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
No,
I look
it's
at Rob and I'm like, dude, I don't know what this means. Like
I mean,
I'm on a
it's
call.
a
It's
whole
like I
nother
gotta
beast
pump.
though. Like you're thinking, like physically, your body, you're going through so much shit with your body, with the hormones, with pumping and being extra sensitive at times and being aggravated at times and learning and trying to figure out, navigate how to control those emotions while you're out here with a uniform on, with your badge on and your gun on, you're like trying to handle your calls. And I just remember one time there was Burke. We were on a call and we were on that call for a long time. And I was pacing back and forth and I could not focus because I needed to go and pump. And he's just like looking at me like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I need to pump like right now. Like I'm about to explode. And he's like, all right, I got you covered. And so I hauled butt to the precinct. And at the time, like we were in this like little closet and this, trying to hurry up. And I'm like, do not clear this call. Do not clear this call until I text you. Because you never know how long it's going to take you to pump. So I'm sitting there, you got to take your uniform off, the top off, you got to take the vest off, you got to get your kit, sanitize everything down, right? You're in this little closet trying to express as much milk as possible, try to stay relaxed so that you can get as much milk for your baby as possible. And then be done with it. Like put the tops on, toss them in the fridge, put a little note on it. Nobody better touch my stuff. All right. And then you go back out there and you handle your call. Like I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And I managed to get through it. And I managed to, I don't know how I found, I guess I was just confident in my ability out here. I knew that I was going to make it out here on the streets. I knew that I was going to be safe. I was still gonna police the way that I police, and I was gonna come back to my baby, every single night.
We don't really consider like the realness of what women
Yeah.
have to do to enjoy a career, enjoy a family. Mm-hmm. You have to wear so many more hats than men do. And I'm not saying each role is one role is better than the other or less or whatever. I mean, if you're in a good thing, it works. But kudos.
Yeah.
Kudos to every woman in law enforcement that was able to find that balance, was able to do that, birth a child, raise a child, come back to work. Because for some, they don't, and that's the reality of it. And that's their choice, good for them.
We see a lot of horrific things. And so we want to protect our children. We want to keep them safe. And my kids probably know a little bit more about life, like way too much more about life than they should at 10 and 12. But one of the things that I will say is that I try to be as open with them as possible, just about the world. I don't go and dive into too much detail, but I want them to be prepared for the world that they're about to, when they get older, that they're going to embark on. And I will say that a lot of it is faking it. Like, I don't know how many times that I've had to switch hats, right? So you're working a homicide and coming back, got to pick up the kids, got to take them to their soccer games, put on that smile, tell them, act like everything was just fine and that you weren't just investigating a child death, right? And then putting a smile on your face and playing mom and letting the kids jump on you and have a good time and then put them to bed and then turn around and come back to work and grind and do the same thing so you can put the bad guy away, right?
Yeah, because you don't know how impactful it is to them, right? Like, I know Rob and I operate at the same kind of like tempo, and I know I tried to do the same thing, but there was moments where I was just like, especially if it was like a barn burner, like, a wild ass pursuit, foot chase, guns, seized and all that. I'm at home having coffee with Kendra, my wife, and I'm just talking about it like, "Pooh, man, we got it in last night," and their little ears are listening.
Oh yeah,
and how they absorb that. I know you and I talked one time before. If you feel like sharing the story about the shooting at MSU.
Yeah. We were at home, and I was doing their little Valentine's with them. We're sitting at the table, and we're making their little Valentine's gifts, for their little classmates. And the code red went out, and I never put the phone on speaker. And for some reason that day I hit speaker because obviously my hands were, I was doing crafts. So I hit the speaker, and both boys heard over the radio that there was an active shooter at MSU. And my oldest looked at me and he was like, "Please, mommy, tell me that you don't have to go." And so at that point, I hurried up and took it off the speaker. And I just told them, I was like, "Run upstairs. Why don't you guys pack?" And they were used to, unfortunately, like cop kids know, like sometimes you got to pack a bag, and they just, they're resilient. They go with the flow. They know the transition. They know that sometimes they're going to get dropped off at a neighbor's house or at a friend's house or a family member's house, because that's just how we operate. Yep. So I sent him upstairs, and I went out to the driveway, and I sat in the car, and I'm listening to the radio, and I'm listening to the calls go out and call the jail. I'm like, "What's up? Like, are we going?" And they weren't sure at that time, and I was like, "I'm going. Like, I don't care." So I came in, called the neighbors. I mean, I'm so grateful for the people that for my crew, like the people that I can lean on at the drop of a dime. I could pick up a phone and call them. They were like, I explained to them what was going on, and loaded the kids up in the car and drove around the block to drop them off. And Xavier grabbed a hold of me, and that was the first time. And I'll get emotional about, so I apologize, but that was the first time that I recognized he knew what I did for a living. And he hugged me so tight, and he was like, "Please come home with me, Mom. Like, please come home to us." And I was like, buddy, There's nothing to worry about. Mommy's the detective. By the time I get there, it's going to be over and done with, right? And it wasn't.
Yeah.
But he didn't know that, and I just remember I gave him a big old squeeze, and I told him, I was like, "Hey, I'll let you guys know, but mommy will be here in a couple hours. It'll be fine." So I hop in the car and I head down, and I end up getting assigned to identify the victims in that situation. So I had to go to Sparrow, and I was gone for several hours, and my kid was up. He was not going to bed. He was ready. He needed to know that I was okay. And that next morning, I drove back over to where he was staying at, and he just came back out, and he gave me this big hug, and he was just like, is everybody okay? And I told him that, they were like, did you guys get the bad guy? And I just said yeah, and left it at that. But that was hard. That was the first time, because like I've been a police officer for, at that point, his entire life, right? And he never, I don't think he ever recognized the dangers that we experienced until that very moment, and I couldn't protect him from it, and it was just, I don't know, it was that moment for me was just,
It's humbling.
it was very humbling,
Very humbling.
and I felt bad at the same time because I hated the fact that he felt that fear and that I mean, that's pain, right? So
yeah, I got a similar situation where my daughter Miranda Renee Cosme, my first
artist.
she's amazing. She's a lot like her dad. That isn't what makes her amazing. What makes her amazing is she's better than her dad, and she's way better than her dad. I went to Holt High School to do a presentation. She asked me to be part of a law enforcement presentation, and during that presentation, I was with Vicky Dalkey, and we were talking to a class about law enforcement stuff. And then at the end of the discussion, I believe the teacher asked, Miranda, can I ask you a question if you're comfortable answering it? Like something to the effect of, did it ever make you nervous that your dad was a police officer? And she's grown. I mean, for all intents and purposes, she's probably 16. She said that it bothered her, and sometimes she had trouble sleeping, worried if dad was going to come home. And she stunted me. Like, she waxed my ass in that moment. And I looked at her, and I was like, I almost wanted to say, I'm sorry. It's like, I don't know what I should have done to make this not a concern for you, but holy shit, like, how long have you been feeling this way? And I was bulletproof. When I left that school, it would have had to take the cartel to take daddy out. Because you talk about hypervigilant. Yeah. I was like, daddy coming home. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because you get this overwhelming flush of like just blind courage. It's like, because I've been doing it for a long time. But to hear her, that sense of fear and that unstableness in her bothered me. It's like, no, I'm sorry that you feel that way. And I'm over here doing my thing. So I can relate to that. I mean, it's worth getting emotional over, because that means you're tied in and you're getting it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then when Rob and I were on VCI, my kids were a lot more grown. You talk about a rodeo. Yeah. Oh, we'd come home and I'd be like, I can't talk about this. Yeah. Man. I can't talk about this because we were just chasing the gun boys all over the city.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, prior to doing the sexual assault stuff, even with like some of my homicide cases, like the boys knowing what it was that I was investigating, and there was one of the other hardest cases that I've ever had. Obviously, any case that involves children is difficult to investigate in and of itself, but just knowing that they had so much access. They had access to the news. So they knew I was investigating this case, and then they heard it on the news. So I would come home, and you're trying to protect them from that I don't know, that you just try to protect them from knowing what it is that you're doing. And in that particular case, it was unfortunate that, that child was brutally murdered, and Xavier looked at me because he knew, like he was following the news. He knew what was going on. And he looked at me and he was like, "Did you guys find her?" And I said, "Yeah." And he just kind of like gave me that look too, and like that, like they just know, you know. He's like, "It wasn't good, was it?" And I said, "No." And he started crying, and then Knox started crying, and we're all sitting together as a family, crying over, you know, this horrific event. And so I don't know. I hope that it doesn't, you know, in my mind, it's going to help them to become amazing human beings, to recognize the how much you have to value your life, right? And value every single day that you have the ability to wake up, and value the things that you do and have a purpose. Like, you know, you can't get into deep conversations with a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old about that kind of stuff, but they see my passion, right, and they see my drive. And all I can hope is that it motivates them in the future when they figure out what path they're on.
Damn right.
That they do the same thing. So.
Doesn't matter what they do. You just want them to be able to put the work in, whatever it is. I don't care. And I tell
value
them,
the importance of it, right?
100%. Hearing your childhood and the turning points in your life between moving and seeing violence in your family between your brother's death and dad is shot and mom's a drug addict and you guys are getting bounced around and all these things. Do you think that and on top of it too, and I love your perspective of being in a family that has deafness, that forced you to pay attention to body language, it forced you to connect in ways that are a little untraditional from how people typically communicate. But I look at it for you and hearing you talk, you know, it's almost like it's a perfect storm for you coming out on the other side of this thing, right? Because now not only can you relate to someone, when someone looks you in the eyes, I can't look someone in the eye and I can't tell them what it feels like to lose a loved one to violence, right? I can't put, as much as I would like to, I can't put myself in their shoes, but you can. So you combine really being able to actually know what that feels like, combined with how dynamite you are with naturally just connecting with someone because you had to growing up in your household. You come on the other side of that, and it seems like those now in your position as a violent crime detective, those experiences in your life, those are your two biggest weapons to really, really provide the best service that someone could possibly get.
Yeah. And I honestly didn't value sitting in my truth. Like I can tell you that I didn't tell people didn't know my past.
Sure.
Up until, I don't know, 5-6 years into being a police officer. I think I had a call with a young girl that was out of control.
Good for you.
And she kind of had the same.
Good for you.
Almost, it was weird how her background mirrored mine, right?
You bet.
And I never really talked about it up until that moment. And I don't remember the officer that was with me, but I was like, hey, she was just over it. She was like, you know, my life is a mess. There's no way that I can come out on top. And I told her, I was like, you have potential, right? You just have to make sure that you're lining yourself up with the right people. You have somebody to uplift you, and you start doing right. You start doing the right thing. Like, all these things that have happened in your past are not who you're going to be, right? You just have to understand that there is purpose for yourself, but you have to see it. You have to see it. And so I told her, I was like, let me tell you a story about a little girl, is how I think I started it. Yeah, and I told her my story. And I was like, do you know who that little girl is today? And she was like, no, who? And I was like, it's me. It's the officer that's standing in front of you right now. Good, and she just kind of like looked at me, and I was like, and my two sisters are thriving. They've graduated college. They're off working their, whatever profession that they were in at that time. And we are thriving. Like, there is the potential for you to make something of yourself. You don't have to become what, you think your family made you out to be. And I don't know why. I mean, maybe it was an embarrassment, but I had no reason to be embarrassed. That is my truth. That is where I come from. We overcame that. My father was I always call him my savior, and we joke around, I kind of laugh about it with him, but he was the one, he was our guiding light. He was the one that kind of redirected our trajectory. And I think that's the reason why we were on the path to success, because we were successful there. But I didn't realize the value of telling my story to people. I didn't think it was important enough. And then I realized how impactful it was for that little girl. And I continued to tell that story. And people to this day, even when and it's not to I want attention. It's just, I 100% can relate with all of the shit that you're going through right now, because I've been through it. Right. Sure. And I would consider myself a success story. And so how can I help you to get to that point? It's almost like paying it forward.
You bet.
Is how I look at it.
Here's what I love about your story and your perspective, right? And you saying it took me a few years before I had the confidence to disclose that, but it was the right place and the right time. And that girl, it mattered, right? And I think that is 100% exactly the way to approach it, is in that moment when that it's right. And it's just like, this girl has to hear this, or this family has to hear this, or whatever it is in that moment, and I think conversely, it could go against someone if they've had trauma, or they've had, some kind of horrific life event, that is what defines them. And then they come out here because we've seen that too, right? They, officers, and they're trying to do the right thing. Like, their heart is in the right place, but the message can get lost very, very quickly. It's the right place at the right time with the right situation. And when you do that, man, it is music. Rob, it is.
You're 1,000% right. If I would, it's compassion.
Oh, 100%.
So what you're describing is somebody who's gone through something, right? But they just don't have the compassion to share it. They don't have the patience to share it.
Yeah.
You got patience for days, Kasha.
Yeah.
If you graduate from that place, you can talk to anybody.
Yeah.
It's great.
Craziest thing that happened in law enforcement in recent history happened in 2020. Can you imagine if that officer had the slightest ability to leave his ego in the trunk, show a little bit of compassion? Now, you got a little cray-cray button in you. That's for sure. You can get down. I
can get down when I need to get down. I can get down when I need to get down. Yeah. I prefer not to. Yeah. Right. I use all my other talents, so to speak. But if I need to get, that is one of the things.
Don't ever steal Kasha Osborn's bacon.
My bacon. My bacon. Don't touch my bacon. Okay.
This
Don't
is
touch
amazing.
my bacon.
This is amazing.
All right. So as negotiators, we took a lot of pride in going to our negotiating schools and being professional, right? But there is a moment, right, after class, and where you're gonna have some sodas with your friends and all these other folks that are there for training, and then you got to go to bed, and sometimes you're making your way to your room and you're like, I'm hungry. But the cafeteria is closed, or the bar is closed, whatever. So we go to Kasha's room, and because she's very particular about what she eats, and she had this I think it was turkey bacon.
I was training.
Yeah, she was training.
I was training for a fitness competition, I got that was my treat.
Yeah, the treat was turkey bacon, bro. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm probably a 0.09, and I'm like, bacon. So I didn't realize Kasha ran track back in the day.
Yeah.
So I snag a handful of her turkey bacon, and I'm like, whatever. And I start running down the hallway, dude. I took about 4 strides, and Kasha blew my ass up, bro. Ass over tea kettle, bacon all over the place. I was like, what are you doing?
Actually, I think I took my bacon back, actually. I'm pretty sure I took my bacon back.
When people talk about the term legacy, I think that in my experience anyway, this is my opinion, but I'm curious what you have to say, Kaz. I think that we start talking about legacy. I think people want it too fast and too soon, and they don't understand the value in it is the definition of the long game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to be consistent with your effort in that whole process through, the whole 25 years. And, at the conclusion of that is when you're going to look back. And I promise it is more important when you look back, just like what we did and probably continue to still do here and there, although not as much, but it's the understanding looking back that it mattered, right? Because knowing that it mattered has more value in the pension that I'm getting or the getting paid from the couch that we joke about or this or that. And I know that we're honored that, you accepted the invitation to come here on this podcast. And, we're thankful to Chief Backus for allowing current employees to come in here and tell their story and your perspective of not only your childhood, but as a mom and as a detective and super hyper committed to the job that you're doing and hyper committed to being a mom and trying to balance all this. But now that you're closer to the end than you are at the beginning, I promise you, sister, you're going to look back on your career and there's going to be no question about it. You're going to be able to look back and you're going to know that it mattered. And you're going to know that it didn't matter just here or there or once or twice. You made it matter every day that you came to work. And we love you for it.
Yep.
And we're so thankful you'd come in here.
For sure.
Can I just speak on that?
Yeah, please.
So Kaz and I went out to lunch. It was a few months ago.
Yep.
And we talked about this, and he was talking about like next. I mean, I have 2 years left,
Yeah.
right? But that's going to go by rather quickly. And he asked me like what my plans were, and I don't have any specific plan. But I did say something to him. I was curious because I'm like, I keep questioning, did I do enough? Like that's just constantly in the back
right.
of my head. Is there more to do? Is there, and I have 2 more years left, so I'm sure I'm going to keep grinding away. But did you guys ever go through that? Like, did you ever feel like at the end, like, could I have done more? And I don't know why that just sets with me, but I'm just, that's something that constantly resurfaces. It comes up constantly, and I don't know if it's just because I'm at that end, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm just like, all right, this is it.
Yeah.
So
I know for a fact how I felt and how I ran that. You want to go first? Or you want to go second on that?
Well, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember what you said, your retirement, bro, and I was very impressed by that. I think, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but you made it very clear that you had left it all on the court,
Yep.
and there wasn't going to be a moment that you looked back and felt like you didn't. And I know you don't like me to say stuff like this, but you're the only person in the history of the Lansing Police Department that's got his badge retired. Yeah. You worked with that kind of tenacity and that kind of effort and that kind of consistency. And we're not sitting there, trying to.
No, you can keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't view us look like, these two are just stroking each other's egos, but that's not it at all. That's not it at all.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, when you look back and you can say, oh damn, that felt good. That I know that I did. There's nothing else you need to do. Like you could literally retire yesterday, and the answer to the question that you're asking is, of course.
yeah.
There's nothing else you can do because everything's situational, right? I think the hunger comes from, am I still going to have a purpose?
Yeah.
Can I find the kind of joy that I find in something else?
Yeah.
I would say find something that the pace is less, but the purpose is the same.
Yeah.
Leave it all on the court like Rob did. You know what I mean? Your purpose will precede you because of the legacy that follows you,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate that.
For sure.
Yeah, man.
And then Rob, the question
Rob.
you always ask, right? And we're almost
Yeah.
forgetting about this.
Yeah.
New person comes to LPD, Kasha. They're like, "Oh my God, what am I gonna do?" What are you gonna tell the young buck, the young woman, the young man that's looking to get in law enforcement, and they're standing in front of Kasha Osborn? What's your two piece for a successful career?
Patience, to be patient with the journey, to step outside your comfort zone, to allow others to push you to levels that you never thought that you'd ever be able to conquer, honestly. This place is I don't know, there's no greater satisfaction than knowing that you can impact people's lives. So take that seriously and be present, listen, be respectful. Know that at the end of the day, when you're putting forth 110% effort, it will be all worth it in the end. Like there are times where, and every single one of us in this room has been through it, where we're rolling on fumes, and we keep moving and we keep moving and we keep moving, because at the end, the reward is far more better, than you can ever imagine. So surround yourself with people that are going to encourage you and to motivate you. Try different assignments. That's one of the things that I wish I did. I mean, I did a lot of assignments. I don't know where I could have added it in my list of things, but get exposure to everything so that you can be a well-rounded officer. And just be compassionate. Like, know that people are going through things, and I'm sure that they have regrets, but don't make them feel like shit. Treat them like people.
That is so true.
Yeah, like we all go through things.
Yeah.
Be that I don't know. It's cheesy, but be that guiding light for them. People at their worst moments, be there to try and encourage and to uplift at the same time. I mean, you're doing your job. It's a weird way to find a balance. You can talk to a perp and still be empathetic to what it is that they're going through, and maybe make some sort of impact in their life. You don't know what you're going to do, but don't treat people like crap just because of the pain that they've endured.
Do me a favor, Kasha. As we end this podcast, could you sign the following statement? I can't, when it pertains to people that are in need for police services, right? I can't save the world, but God damn it, I'm gonna try. Can you sign that? Let's go!
No, come on, man. Kasha, thank you for coming in here. We love you for it. And it takes a lot of courage to come in here and be a guest with us. But we knew that you were a great fit for the series we're dedicating to women in law enforcement. You're a huge asset to the police department. Thank you for coming in here. We love you, girl.
Yes, absolutely.
My man,
Let's
Kasha.
go.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. See you in the next one, man.
By the way, can I just say one more thing? Women do
sorry.
it better. We do it way better. Shout out to all my ladies out there. We do it better. Keep coming.
Cut it, Z. Cut it.